Okay, so there's a couple things that you want to make sure when you are trying to achieve a high quality displacement map. So first being you need a high enough resolution. In this case I'll be using 1000 by 1000 pixels, but if you are really getting close-up shots of your displacement map, then I would recommend stretching it all the way to 4 or 8K, depending on your scene of course. And second point being that you need a higher color depth. So I'll be comparing results from materials 8-bit against 32-bit color depth, and so you better understand the setup that I have, I'll show you in Photoshop. So on the left I have 8-bit material, and on the right I have 32-bit not material, sorry, texture, and I have applied in both cases on those logos, I've applied a 3 radius pixel Gaussian blur. If you want to make a 32-bit texture, you choose it on when you are making a new document in Photoshop. Let me quickly interrupt this video because I would like to discuss what type of file formats you should use in order to achieve a high quality. So I have the exact same setup, which I will discuss in the future of this video, but I would like to break these down. So you can see JPEG format, since it does a lot of compression during exporting, you lose a ton of detail. Then with GIF and PNG you have slightly better detail, but it's not perfect. You can see almost kind of individual pixels during this displacement. But PSD and TIFF, you can tell that the displacement is really flawless, and if you are trying to achieve the best quality, I would recommend using either PSD or TIFF file format. However, if you're taking shots from further away and you don't need really good details, then I would recommend going with either GIF or PNG file format, because they will put less strain during rendering, which will result in shorter render times. The reason why PSD and TIFF format produce such a high quality displacement maps is because you can export those file formats in 32-bit color depth in Photoshop, which means the transition between black and white pixels in an image can be much smoother, especially after the blur is applied. And simply put, more information you have with your texture, the smoother the displacement will be. So if we go back to Cinema 4D and open a note editor of my 8-bit Octane material, you can see my setup, which is really straightforward. It's just image texture fed into displacement and color correction nodes that plug into displacement and roughness channels of my metallic material. Color correction node is only so that we can control the roughness of the displacement, and you get a little bit better visualization of how the displacement is working. So if I apply my 8-bit to a 8-bit texture to my plane, we don't even have to zoom in to see that the quality is really poor of our displacement, but if we do, you can see individual pixels, and this is because in our standard displacement node, what you get is real low level of detail. So if you ramp it up to 8K, you should have much smoother displacement, but this still is not anywhere good to take close-up shots. So you can try to make it a little bit smoother with Gaussian blur of, in this case we can do 5. So you should see much better result. However, because we're using 8-bit color depth with a really high level detail, we get these artifacts on the side, and these are not looking good at all. So you can try to fix that by dropping the level of detail that you've selected by 4 in this case. So if you go to 2K, you can see the artifact is gone, but it's not really a smooth transition, I would say. However, that's as far as 8-bit texture can go. So if you use 32-bit and apply it over my initial material, you can see that the quality got much better, and even, to be honest, when you zoom in really close, you can see that there's some artifacts from the reflection, but I don't know if anybody would use a close-up shot like that. So you probably, in most cases, you should get away with this type of displacement and this type of setup. Oh, in the wrong material. So this is my 32, but it's the same setup, 8K, Gaussian of 5, and we can see now how does look if we have a rough color, not a specular or reflective material, so diffuse color I mean. So kind of roughness challenge that we have, you can see that it kind of simulates how a diffuse material would look like and how it would perform during displacement. So if we spread it a little bit and leave it render for a while, you can see that displacement is nearly perfect, to be honest. And yeah, that's pretty much it. However, sometimes you are not happy with this displacement being this logo being so large. So if I wanted to scale it down, I would go to my image texture and go UV transform and scale down to, let's just say 0.5. You can see now that I have this styling, and you should be able to get rid of it by going image texture and applying a black color border mode. However, you can see that you only get rid of roughness on all the other logos. So you see that's perfectly reflective, and only roughness challenge applied in the middle one. However, displacement still tiles around it. So the only workaround I know of is baking the texture down. So if I apply baking texture node in between my image texture and displacement, you should get rid of all the ones around it. And if you zoom in, do we still have the same quality? I wouldn't really say so. You have a little bit of artifacts, and that's just what you get when you have baking texture node in between after your texture node. However, if you increase the resolution a little bit, so in this case let's say 2K, you should get a little bit better quality and less artifact. You can try to get rid of those artifacts by going to your into your displacement node and dropping the level of detail to 4K. So you see we have less artifacts, but the transition is not as smooth. But if you zoom in enough, you shouldn't have any problems with it. And if you wanted to get even better detail, like you can see some artifacts, some waviness over here, you would ramp it up from my current texture. I have 1000 by 1000. You would scale it up to maybe 4K, but that of course depends of how important is this logo, how close am I gonna get to this logo, because you don't want to have 4K texture and having this texture really far away, so you're kind of wasting all that VRAM during rendering, and it's just adding additional load, which is completely unnecessary. You can achieve this by, if you having a really far away shot, you can easily achieve this using using normal or even bump map. Normal, I would always use normal just because it's closer to displacement than bump map, but that's of course depends of how far away you wanna take a shot of this texture. So I would say that's pretty much it, all the basics, and if it was useful I would appreciate a like, and if you have any comments, recommendations, I would love to hear them in comments, and I would definitely check them out. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you later.